Dr. Tanjit Singh, our Vice President for APARA, to share with you on his topic regarding innovations in medical care, active aging. So Jising, over to you.
Okay, thank you, Oliver. I'll proceed to share my screen now. So I'm Dr. Tan. I'm a medical doctor actually, and I'm still an actively practicing medical doctor. But I'm also the Vice President of Asia Pacific Assistive Robotic Association, and I have been dealing with interesting innovations in AI and robotics for the past decade. That's why I'm here presenting and sharing some of what I have seen and have done previously in AI innovation in healthcare. So I'm still a practicing medical doctor, and I mainly do deal with disability care. So I see very dependent and disabled patients every day, and I hope that with the breakthrough in technologies in AI, in robotics, I can improve the function of my patients so that they could be more functional and more able to reach some of their goals and dreams. So that's always what I have in mind, that the environment with AI innovations and robotics in it can help my patients which have some disability in their function to match up and to help them fulfill their functional needs. Okay, so why AI? I think if we go back, it is a lot to do with a lot of our digitalization of our data. So I remember as a younger doctor, I was using the pager, I was writing my notes in pieces of paper in a file. But these are all changing, and we are beginning to digitalize a lot of this data into a form that AI will be able to help us interpret and give us, support us in terms of the diagnosis or monitoring of the patient. So digitalization has a huge role to do with how AI and robotics has been progressing in the medical field. And for me, I'm very, fortunate to be in this type of situation, which I can get to see some of the latest innovations and try them out as well. So even WHO has already published a reference in terms of the digitalization of the data and how we can, stratify each so that we know, all of us know that we are talking on the same page. And there's a lot of virtual health application nowadays. For example, in the past 1 year due to COVID, I myself has been forced to do some form of telemedicine, telehealth with my patient. Essentially, they are already pretty dependent and disabled, and I usually do home house calls for them. But with a COVID, some of these house calls may be a bit more tricky, especially in nursing homes. So telehealth will be an excellent replacement. And with telehealth, some of the data are digitalized. For example, we can have telemonitoring, and you can have all the blood pressure readings, all the pulse oximetry reading, all your weight, reading, all digitalized and fed to a system which can, support or warn us for any impending issues. So basically, AI has been happening in the healthcare landscape mainly due to the digitalization and the huge amount of data generated from this digitalization. So when we talk about healthcare data set, where does this data set comes from? So I would break it down into two parts of it. We do have objective data, the numbers the vital signs, the lab tests, readings, and the imaging. And of course, as we know, digitalization of this objective data in terms of numbers, images are so much easier to train an AI to interpret what it meant. Of course, the AI can be much faster when it's trained and can support more quantity of the services. The load is scalable, and it is so of very much help to our colleagues in the maybe the radiology department to have a first scan to point out where potential pathology is, and to reaffirm by the radiologists thereafter. So objective data in terms of AI development has been very, very rapid. We can have, I would think that there are almost 20 to 30 healthcare, health medtech company focusing on, reading X-rays, CT, MRIs, even ultrasound scans, whereby, they can give you some provisional information on the patient using AI, using edge computing as well. The subjective data will be the one that is not so easy. It is data, symptoms that, we gather from the patient, the family, the caregivers, nurses. So these are the data that it's very, very variable from one person to another. So AI unfortunately has not reached the stage yet to collect the vast amount of data yet to ascertain, subjective data. People lie sometimes, unfortunately, because they have some other issue. For example, a kid, that wants to eat the cake may say that, he's not hungry, but actually he's not, he doesn't have pain in his abdomen. But maybe he has some appendicitis, has some pain in the abdomen, but because he wanted to eat the cake, he said there's no pain, So subjective data is still very subjective, and it's very, very difficult for the AI to, help us to interpret some of these, to help us in some of these processes. Okay, so I will go for the easy one, the objective data that we are looking at. Of course, we are looking at a lot of histology, digital retinal photography will be a very good example of how we use AI to interpret what is the provisional diagnosis. However, I think in terms of the medical landscape, you still need a human to sign off. That means that the data, the diagnosis, cannot be confirmed by the machine. You have to have a human being, a trained human being with some sort of license, I guess, to sign off the diagnosis. So for example, DRP, there's very good, AI supported systems that will generate very accurate, reports, but it still needs an ophthalmologist to have a look at the picture and to agree with the AI and to sign them off. Numbers, vital signs, your blood pressure reading, your heart rate variability, lab results, all these objective data can be subjected to using AI as a means of, collating the data and making sense of what is the potential diagnosis. Some of the lab results are pretty simple. We have a range of the results. Anything above is hyper, anything below is hypo, So it doesn't take a lot of work for AI to interpret that, or not us as well. But imaging will be, with the vast amount of imaging done, whole body scans, AI will be very, very crucial in picking up those abnormal area for the pathologists, the radiologists to have a closer look at, and that would means a lot of time saving, reducing the effort by the human that's required to look through all the data that's generated. And there are more and more interesting data that we are collecting and to understand not only the physiology data, of the person, but also, the um, lifestyle, the habits of the individual. For example, if you can see the back of this slide, this is the graph that is generated by the a device that collects the energy usage in the homes. So through the device, we can, and using AI, we can actually know that the electric signature of each of the devices, whether it is turning on the air conditioning, charging your handphone, we will know that, what is the person doing at that time by looking at their energy algorithms. So this gives us a picture of the lifestyle, and it can also alert us when something is wrong. It's a very interesting project that we are trying to do. And of course, gait speed, cognitive assessment, and all these other data that we can collect will tell us a lot about the patient and the health status. So, of course, like I mentioned before, the objective of using AI is to support us in terms of saving the time, to interpret the vast amount of data that's generated, and definitely to save cost as well, because if you need 10% to do the job, and the 10% costs, as a healthcare worker, we cost a lot. And if you have 1% that can do the 10% job, then the 9% can carry on and do other things. There will be a lot of cost saved. And accessibility and scalability, a lot of times, some of the management plans and some of even the monitoring services can be used while some form of application nowadays, which I will showcase one later. It will be very interesting, and we can be able to reach more at once, and able to reduce the barrier to more knowledge-based services. So you can see in the back the picture, it's some form of AI interpretation of a wound that can be taken on the photo of your headphone, and it can interpret whether the wound is healing, it's not healing, is bigger than the last record or is smaller. You see, so these are things that will help people to do more remote-based treatment and save costs, basically, on needing to travel. So I will give you some examples that I personally has been in touch with, and some of them involving. So the one of them is AI assisted screening. So we do have certain processes in which we triage the patient so that we know where to right side them, and not all people must go to the emergency department and choke up the whole system. So AI assisted screening has quite a few advantages for this program. You will start by answering some questions, your symptoms, and you will be asked even more questions on your symptoms so that the AI can have an idea whether your condition is very serious enough to demand immediate support, or you can go on for a family GP first to have a look, and to get treated. So this is a very comprehensive system that a person or in future hospitals may want to use to screen their patient first when they are at home before coming to the hospital, to make sure that they really need that form of service in the emergency department rather than a normal general practitioner. Or in fact, this system actually records down the whole subjective database that the patient would have been given to the doctor anyway, and help the doctor to include it in the electronic medical records to save time again on recording by the doctors. So the next one I could give you example of is the AI assisted uh, management that we can do. For example, this is a program in an app now. So a lot of new interesting applications are being used in management. And for example, if you can see, I do have the app in my handphone. What this does is essentially it can actually uh, track your stress level. So when I activate this, I put my finger into my light and my camera, and I start to measure. I could, I don't think you can see it, but I could actually use a PPG technology to work out my autonomic nervous system, the sympathetic and parasympathetic, my heart rate variability, and come up with a metrics, your stress metrics, whether you are very stressed now, or not. So then they will follow up by giving you some management plan, like you should be doing this, you should be doing some meditation, you should be listening to some of this music to decrease your stress. So this is something, for mental health that, you can actually try using your smartphone this and immediately, in fact, if I give you the password. So this is very interesting ideas in how AI has been applied in our daily lives and in future. That is, in devices, like I mentioned, AI assisted devices, AI assisted assistive devices like Livio AI. It is a hearing aid, and this hearing aid will help you to hear better in all the situation. It will understand the ambient noises. It will understand what you are doing, so that it can, sort of gives you the best hearing experience that you can have. And it goes even further. This little device in your ear can actually do things like translation of foreign language. I've tried it. I had a mold taken, and then I have fitted with one of these hearing aids before, although I'm not a hearing impaired. But it is super cool that, a person talking to you in a foreign language will be translated real time in your own language, with the device. And the device will track how much you are using your brain, like talking to people, listening to music, or doing exercises. It has GPS tracking. It basically has everything thrown into a small devices, which is incredible. And the next thing, like Newman, that's my friends from Australia. They are looking at new sources of data, like I mentioned, doing energy detection, using energy algorithms to detect what devices or what form of energy is being used in the household. That will give us a lot of information and data as well for us to try to interpret and for us to automatically, detect something wherever something is wrong, and when, for example, a single dwelling elderly in the home needs help. So these are things that is here actually. Perhaps not widely used because some of them are still in research, in research, and some of them are a bit more costly, at the moment. Yes. Yep. So to me, at least as a medical doctor, it's not too difficult to even create or try out AI's solution. For example, my friends in Sentient.io, they have a AI as a service, and they even have a hackathon, recently online, which they will, give out prizes. So to me, AI has been coming closer and closer to the ground, and supporting people like myself who are not a computer scientist, who do not code, but we do have the ground knowledge of what we need. And through such efforts by the AI landscape that is moving closest to us, we can actually make use of them to create more what I say practical solution to the issues that me and my patient face every day. So with that, here is my contact, and I hope you will enjoy the rest of the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Tan.
Let me,
And